Okay, Councilman Lesser, would you like to introduce yourself?
Councilman Lesser, District 9.
And Councilman Emerson.
Sure, Tony Emerson, District 4.
All right, thank you. Okay, our first order of business is to elect a chair for 2021.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate yourself as chairman.
Second.
All right. Put a nomination in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. I will just continue on. Thank you for that vote of confidence. Appreciate it. Next order of business, you have in front of you the January 25th meeting minutes. If there are no changes, would accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right, at this point, we have a traffic signal update. Brian, you want me just to pass that to Christy?
Yes, I think Christy's ready.
All right, Christy, take it away.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen, although you should have received handouts with my slides. If anyone has any questions during my presentation, please just jump in and talk. I'll try to pause after each slide to give you a chance to do that in case you didn't want to interrupt, but don't let, that's not going to hurt my feelings. So we'll do it that way. All right, so can everybody see my screen? Yes, all right, great. So I get lots of questions about signal systems, and I haven't done a presentation before on them, so you'll have to let me know if I miss anything big that you want to know about. At the moment, we have 186 signalized intersections in town. Our structures are designed for about a 40-year lifespan, and we should be replacing 5 per year given the number of signalized intersections we have. However, technology, conduits, and wiring are not lasting 40 years. Our current annual program dollars for signal replacements is $885,000. It was a recent increase. If we were to replace 5 intersections per year, we should be spending about $185,000 per intersection. Our most recent intersection costs are closer to $275,000. Part of the reason for this is ADA improvements. We've added quite a bit of sidewalk improvements, and that increases the number of structures. PED poles, PED buttons separate from our actual signal poles. And that's a big part of it. We've also tried to enhance technology, but there are some system-wide improvements that could happen that aren't funded at this moment. Another way to look at that, just to break down the money a little bit, we looked at a 12-year average of intersection replacement costs, or signal replacement costs by intersection, and the 12-year average is about $230 per intersection. In the last 5 years, that average is actually closer to $270. And then if I look at just the last 3 projects, which are, I picked that because those are the ones that I've done since I started here at the city, we're closer to $280,000. All of this is, if we extrapolate those numbers to look at if we're replacing 3 per year, which is what our program is designed to do right now, and we use the 12-year average, the 5-year average of the last 3, these would be our annual program costs. And you can see that those are all below the current program cost of $885,000. So that's pretty good, except for if you consider that we should be replacing 5 signalized intersections per year on a 40-year program. This is what our annual cost should be. At this point, I think I've read looked at my presentation and went, man, they're going to think I'm going to ask them for money. And that's really not why I'm here today. I'm here to actually just give you some information and talk about different ways of looking at our situation right now. Some folks would say, yeah, we don't have enough money to replace 5 per year. And while that's true, maybe we need to say that we're not on a 40-year replacement cycle. And maybe there's another way to say that. Maybe we don't want to fund a 186 signal system. Maybe we're just not wanting to fund that big of a system. And there's lots of different ways to look at it. There's variables, there's cause and effect relationships. I like to look at it kind of like this. If we were wanting to spend $500,000 a year to replace signals in City of Topeka, we can afford a system of 66 signals. And that would mean at this moment in time, we need to remove 120 over the next 40 years. If we were to spend 750, that's a 99 signal system with a removal of 91 signals over the next 40 years. If we were to spend $1 million a year, 132 is our signal size. And at 1.25, 165 signals would be our system size. And as you can see, the spread of money goes from definitely reasonable because it's less than what we're trying to spend now to potentially unreasonable because that's a lot more than what we're spending now. But no matter what you see, we should be considering the removal of signals given what we're spending. And so this is just another way of looking at how we handle the signal system in town and compare it to what kind of money we're spending. So if we take that and think, okay, we're going to have a 40-year cycle, whether we like it or not, we can choose the amount of money we spend, and we can start looking at what that really means annually, because we want to start making those decisions and addressing those consequences, I guess, right away. So if we want to fund a $500,000 signal replacement system, we should concentrate on replacing 2 signals a year and removing 3. If we want to fund a $1.25 million system, we should be replacing 5 and removing 1 every year. There are other considerations. There's lots of ways to handle intersection traffic. We can, put in medians. We can have some cool, confusing intersections at roundabouts. There are some signals in town that we could remove and replace with just pedestrian activated crossings and not have a signal across the main road at all. And those are lots of things that we should look at for every single intersection. So this really is not a simple, how many signals do we want to fund and where do we want to go with this kind of question. So some of the things we consider, intersection capacity, we're starting to change that. In the past, it's been how many vehicles are we getting through an intersection? And now we're going to start looking at how many people are we getting through this intersection. That's harder to do when you've got people in vehicles, but we can start counting bikes and pedestrians and how we're handling all of the traffic in an intersection. Also need to consider the cost of conducting signal warrant analyses, excuse me, and the cost of removing signals, because they do have a cost associated with them, and that's not really included in some of the things that I've shown you today. Safety, how we handle an intersection, given its safety history and how we project the safety under a new intersection configuration, perhaps, is a consideration of how we're going to handle traffic in an intersection. Traffic flow changes, some of those things change over time, and our signals have been in some of those locations for a long time. And then the capacity of future projects to make changes to intersections. These are all considerations that go into how we look at traffic at intersections. So what we're doing now, I'm hoping you guys can consider the idea that we currently fund about 100 intersection signal system, and consider the idea that we should be looking at some signal removal no matter what we do. We also want to consider our desire for enhanced signal capability. I talked about some technology changes that we could make system-wide that might help us reduce the number of signals, but enhance the capability of the signals that remain so we can continue to move traffic and we can continue to be flexible when there are changes to our traffic flows at those intersections. And then when I said consider that we probably need to be removing signals now, especially those ones that don't warrant it, they're easy to remove. That's one of the implications of a smaller signal system that we have now. There are benefits to having a smaller system, but it can be challenging politically to remove signals. The 2021 signal replacement program is going to replace the 10th Street at Washburn. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. I'm gonna stop clicking. 10th Street at Washburn and 10th Street at Lane, as well as 21st and Randolph signals. And that pretty much uses up the money. I'd like to go ahead and study signals in the downtown area, because I think that's some of our low-hanging fruit as far as being able to remove signal systems and either put in different ways of accommodating traffic or pedestrians in those areas. And then we would talk about what ones we actually want to remove after we've done the studies. That's really all I have. You guys have any questions?
Questions from the committee? Councilman
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chair. Chrissy, thanks for your presentation. I did have a question. You mentioned that thing that's, your average cost has increased quite a bit the past, I don't know if you said 2 or 3 ones you've done this year because of ADA things. Is that something we have to do in every intersection, or is that just some that have a certain volume of pedestrian traffic?
No, those ADA requirements apply to every intersection, and some intersections have been updated to accommodate those ADA requirements, but some have not. And I would say probably most have not. And considering where the sidewalk goes versus where our signal pole goes versus where the ped pole has to go, it's kind of a mixed bag, and we look at it pretty closely at each intersection.
Okay, thank you. If I could ask a follow-up, please.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess also, is there anything proprietary that's driving the cost? Are we standardized on you have to buy this module that's, 10 times what the other one is because we standardize on one? Is there anything we're doing like that you see that we could, do it as equal and get some savings?
We do standardize our controllers and conflict monitors, and that's about $5,000 per intersection. That's not driving up any cost at all. And by doing so, we're able to tie signals into a central system and control them from one location at Traffic Management Center. And that helps us be more flexible. It also helps with of course, materials for the folks that are doing maintenance on those things. So I would say that yes, we do, but it's not an indirect cost.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lesser, any questions? Christy, I've just got a couple. So an intersection that doesn't have a signal, you do a study, and if it meets warrants, you install a signal. How do you go about removing a signal? Is it the reverse process?
Yeah, pretty much. And just to clarify, when an intersection meets warrants, that doesn't mean we put in a signal. It means that we can consider a signal at that location. And really, when they meet warrants, we want to take into account our alternative intersection configurations too. So when we want to remove a signal, it is going to be similar. We're going to check the warrants. There are a number of signals in town that I'm pretty sure don't meet warrants for traffic volumes or for crashes. And then we would say, hey, how do we want to handle the traffic that's there now? So it isn't just the warrant analysis, but we want to know if there is a logical way to handle traffic if we did remove the signal. And there could be some signals that don't warrant a signal, or some intersections that don't warrant a signal, but we might go ahead and consider leaving the signal in place and replacing it just because of its characteristics.
You have a gut feel on how many signals we could eliminate?
I bet we could get to 10 to 15 in the next several years. Like I said, politically, it's not a favorable thing. You guys have probably had to fight some fights to support me in that, but I would say that's our low-hanging fruit is 10 to 15 signals. Or sections.
All right, thanks for that. My gut feel is it kind of depends on where it's at. If it's in the downtown area, I'm not sure there'd be as big a fight as if it's a, arterial in a residential area or something like that. So I am a proponent of removing signals that we don't need. I don't know about the rest of the committee, but it just seems like a no-brainer. So I appreciate your Appreciate your work. We do have Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala joining us today. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question that is not so much about the traffic signals, but it does have to do about issues that I continue to get emails about and also phone calls about with stop signs along with speed limit signs. Specifically, I've been receiving them in the Oakland area from streets that run south to north. South to north, yes. And I'm wondering if we can have any kind of presentation on that. Next month's meeting, I can bring back all the streets, the names that have come up to my attention. But because Oakland is so tight, and because there have been any number of rerouting as work is done either on main breaks or River Road, what have you. I can't say that I've heard a voluminous amount about traffic accidents. However, it is to the point where some families are not letting their kids even go around riding their bikes throughout Oakland because of the high rate of speed of cars, and also because just of the amount of detours that can happen. So I'm wondering if I can request that that be put on a future meeting's agenda so that we can discuss it. I would really appreciate it, Chair.
Yeah, we can certainly add that to, we'll add that to next month's agenda.
Thank you.
Ms. Erickson?
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Okay, I do get lots of questions about speed of vehicles in neighborhoods, as well as controlled versus uncontrolled intersections. Are those really the topics you'd like me to hit and use Oakland as an example?
Yes,
I can do that. Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I think it'd be a good discussion, just the idea of how speed limits are set and whether putting up a speed limit sign really makes a difference or not, and how that's tied to enforcement. I think it's probably the next question. So all of that would be.
Great.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Lesser?
Yes, thank you. One other thing, Christina, I may be telling you something that you already know, but I've had a couple times where I've gotten phone calls as a result of a detour, and the people start using it as seems like a drag strip. And I did call Chief Cochran, I think it was a year and a half ago. I had an area over in my district, and he did send some officers over there and issued a number of tickets in a short period of time, which kind of slowed things down. So if there is, that was a specific one in regards to when 17th, people were cutting through that back, to get over to 21st and just flying down there. And I had a number of calls, and he sent some officers to monitor that. And so just FYI, if that's something that you have a specific area, I know they are willing to do that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mike. And definitely that's a good suggestion. That has happened before in Oakland. And unfortunately, what happens is that once they realize whether it's coming over Branner Bridge, whether it's something, a speed, where there is some motorcycle TPD that are out on Sardu or on Seward. What happens is we see it plastered all over the Oakland Facebook page. I understand people are trying, they kind of want to take care of each other, but when it comes down to that, there is no excuse. So I think that those are good measures, and we have to, especially neighborhoods like Oakland. Again, I just revert back over and over to how tight it is with the streets. And for over a year on Lake Street, on the 500 block of Lake Street, it was not unusual to see the traffic out in the front of my house and on other blocks close to me at 45, 50 miles an hour, which is just atrocious for a residential community in as small as these streets are and tight. But I thank you for that, Mike.
Sure, you bet.
All right, thank you. I think everybody probably gets, has their favorite stretch of road that they get calls on. In my district, it's Gage Boulevard coming from the county south going northbound on Gage, where it goes from 45 to 40, pop up over the hill, and people are cruising. Like Councilman Lesser, I've asked and had TPD out in that area, and I think it does help, but city manager might help to combine this conversation about speed limits and stop signs and things like that with the enforcement aspect as well. Some of the other questions I've had in the past are about how we specifically handle traffic enforcement, whether there's a separate unit. So I think some of those questions might be a good discussion. Doesn't have to be lengthy, but good information. All right. Any other questions? Christy, thanks for that. I did have one last question. Do we still have, there used to be several years ago on Wanamaker and 21st, and I can't remember what the technical term for it was, but basically all the signals were hooked together through a computer system, and depending on the time of day. Are we still running those kind of operations?
Yeah, the InSync system. So it's a third-party proprietary system that runs from 10th and Wanamaker through the 21st and Wanamaker intersection to Farallon and 21st. And we actually updated the timings on that in the summer of 2019. And I call it the wormhole. If you catch it just right, you can catch all greens from 10th and Wanamaker to 21st and Farallon, which is kind of crazy. But yeah.
Great. And I have been able to do that once in a while.
I don't, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Christy, I do have a question too, and I certainly don't want to be that guy that's complaining about sitting at traffic lights, but I do notice this because I do very frequently, as council, many times with Mr. Emerson, Mr. Dobler, Mr. Trout, on different occasions, frequent small business Hanover Pancake House for morning meetings. And, I certainly have never broken the law and driven through a red stoplight, as far as you know. But the one at Huntoon, I believe it is, Huntoon or 12th there in Kansas, is that on any type of, I've sat through that son of a bitch for like 10 minutes. Is that thing on an automatic deal or is it older technology there?
It is older technology. Keep in mind that about a month ago, we figured out that something was wrong with the eastbound detection, and people really were sitting there for quite some time without the signal changing.
So I'm telling the truth then.
Yeah, yes, that one's been problematic, but they did get it fixed several weeks ago, so hopefully you're not seeing as much of an issue. With the exception of the signals that are on our InSync system, they're either coordinated by hand or they're fixed time type signals. And when I talked about some system-wide technology that we could apply to help us with the signals that we decide to keep, one of those things is the adaptive system. And so the InSync system is adaptive. It will shift those timings to accommodate the traffic that's there. But, Huntoon and Kansas and some of our other intersections just don't have that. And it really became very noticeable when COVID hit because our traffic volumes dropped, but those signals really weren't being as responsive as they should have been to that kind of a change in volume. And especially in the downtown area, as I look forward in time, and I'm really optimistic and hopeful that all the people working to really enhance that downtown area and bring in a lot more businesses and a lot more events are very successful. But then I ask myself, how do we flush traffic? How do we handle event traffic coming in and out of downtown in a way that we can be flexible with those signals, but not have a whole bunch of people standing there, manually changing those timings to address our needs. And so that there's some challenges there and some good solutions out there, but they are fairly pricey. So
I did see city manager run through that light though after waiting for a while, just so you know, just coming from the west anyway.
Oh my,
That-
oh my God.
That's why I thought it was okay.
All right, moving on. By the way, just a plug for, I know the traffic, whatever it's called now, traffic division, small group of folks that does a great job. I know there's not a whole lot of signal techs. People would probably be kind of shocked to find out I think they still make all their own signs, and
Yes.
it's a pretty well-run organization, has been for many, many years. So we appreciate the work they do. It's one of those things you don't notice till it doesn't work, and that's not very often. So appreciate that. All right, let's move on to utility coordination update. Mr. Faust.
At this time, I'll turn it over to our pavement manager, Robert Bidwell.
All right, thank you. I was just asked to provide a kind of a review of our utility coordination efforts on our street projects. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here in just a minute. Before I do, I did want to share kind of our monthly efforts on a kind of a global or a bird's eye viewpoint. We do have a monthly utility coordination meeting where we get together with the city staff, project managers from engineering, from the utility departments. We invite our design consultants that are working on our city street projects, and then also representatives from the utility companies. And we meet together on a monthly basis to mainly share the project lists. We highlight new and upcoming projects. We identify potential conflicts that may arise. For instance, just like our street projects, the utility companies, minus the emergency type work during the winter, they plan a lot of their updating work during the summer months. So for instance, if we have a project scheduled where we may have to shut down an intersection and detour traffic, we want to make sure that, Kansas Gas isn't going to be working on that detour route, replacing some gas lines that may, interfere with traffic. So we try to communicate on a big scale like that. And it also helps us to keep regular contact, between our project managers and consultants and the utility folks. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So on a more project specific, this diagram here comes from our design manual. Basically, it shows more for new development. It shows an ideal layout for separating and organizing the different utilities. It may be hard to see some of these colors on here. But again, in an ideal world, we'd have different corridors set up for all the different types of utilities, depending on right of way and sidewalk locations, things like that. Again, this is really in an ideal world and with new construction. Now, as you can imagine, on most of our projects in the city where we've had utilities in existence, for up to and over 100 years, things don't always work out that way as utilities are added throughout the years. They kind of just go wherever they are able to fit. So this is kind of what we see more out in the field. We're down here on the bottom. We have what looks like a storm pipe being replaced. And, that's kind of fishing the needle in there, going under what looks like maybe a sanitary sewer line there towards the top of the picture. That may be a water line or a gas line. So obviously there's a lot of utility conflicts during our construction projects. So what we do, starting off with during design, we try to kind of right size the amount of utility coordination and efforts and information needed on the plans with the scope of the project. There's different quality levels of utility coordination, which I'll get to in a moment. But in general, the way our procedure works with utility coordination, when design first begins on the project, the design engineer usually will be a consultant. We'll consult with each utility company. And I want to stress that this is not only the private utility companies, but also our city utility department, not only water and storm and sanitary sewer. The city also has fiber optic lines. There's also traffic signal detection, things like that with the traffic signals. So there's a whole bunch of different utilities out there. So the first step is our consultants will meet with each utility company to determine what utilities are out there within the construction limits of the plans. And depending on the scope of the project, that's when they work to determine the horizontal and vertical locations of all the utilities if it's needed. During preliminary design, the consultant identifies any locations of potential conflicts between the existing utilities and the proposed improvements. After field check, they will send out a utility field check set of plans, as well as a conflict list of the known utility conflicts to each company. At that point, the utility companies will verify that their information is correct. They'll double check that what's shown on the plans for their utilities is correct. And then they will identify a proposed alignment for relocation for their utilities. After that, the consultant will schedule a utility coordination meeting with all the utility companies to review all the potential conflicts, all the proposed relocations and other remediation actions, as well as work on a tentative relocation timeframe. Ideally, all of the conflicting utilities would be relocated before construction starts. That's not always the case. Sometimes it makes more sense, depending on the scope of the project, for the utilities to be relocated during construction. So obviously that would require additional coordination between what's shown on the plans and the utility companies and the contractor. So that's pretty much the general procedure we follow. And I will share also the different subsurface utility engineering levels. And again, this works to basically kind of right size the amount of utility efforts to the scope of the project. Level D is basically just reviewing existing records that either city has or the utility companies have on where their facilities are located. Level C kind of steps up that to surveying and plotting visible features, whether that's locating manholes on the ground or utility markers above ground. surveying those and including those in the plans. Level B utilizes application of basically locator machines. Depending on kind of the age and technology of the utilities, they do have some sensors that can locate buried utilities, and to within a certain degree of certainty approximate where the horizontal and or depth of the utility line. Those are approximate. It's not common for a utility to be marked and then the actual line may be a couple feet away, but it gets you in the general direction. And then level A is the most precise method, and that usually involves potholing or otherwise exposing the utility lines to view that they may be measured for depth and accurate location. And so something like quality level A, that would be required on a project like the 12th Street reconstruction project like that, where there's potentially changes in the pavement elevation, but we're sidewalks and bike lanes are being added. So that one is definitely where the quality level A would come into play. I will say we do, anytime a private utility is in the public right of way, it conflicts with, any proposed construction. Most of the time they are required to move. However, we do try to, work with the utility companies and come up with other solutions. One example of this was when we reconstructed the 21st and Kansas intersection about 2 or 3 years ago. Pretty early on, the consultant discovered a potential conflict with the major Kansas gas line. To relocate that gas line was going to be about $500,000 cost to Kansas Gas. And it was also going to potentially delay the construction schedule for the project. However, we were able to modify the subgrade section in one area. We added a geotech or geogrid fabric so we could skinny up the subgrade section, and we were able to avoid the gas line. So that helped out Kansas Gas quite a bit, but also helped out our construction time schedule to stay on schedule. And finally, as much effort as we put into utility coordination during design, it doesn't stop when construction starts. I'm sure most of you are aware that it's fairly common for utility conflicts to occur during construction. A few examples of this here recently, on the North Kansas Avenue project up by the rescue mission, we bored a new water line and new storm sewer underneath the railroad tracks. There was a lot of coordination with the railroad to accomplish that. But we also discovered there were a couple very high dollar transcontinental fiber optic lines running through there. We had to adjust the design a little bit, but we were able to avoid those fiber optic lines and get the utilities board underneath the tracks without incident. So that was a good example. A bad example on that 21st and Kansas project I mentioned previously. During construction, the contractor hit and cut, I think, the 1 or 2 existing fiber optic lines multiple times. those lines were marked on the pavement, but once you remove the existing pavement, a lot of those markings go away. So that can be an issue as far as keeping those existing utilities in mind when they're constructing. And finally, some of these utility issues in the field aren't confined just to the private utilities. This was an example on the Southeast Adams Street reconstruction a couple of years ago. Up towards the top of the picture, there was a water line that broke and it washed out a lot of the subgrade here in the intersection that the contractor already had in place. It washed out a lot of some of the base rock in the curb line down the road. So there are issues with city utility facilities as well during construction. I will open up if you have any questions on our general utility coordination efforts.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions from the committee?
Yeah, Chair.
Yeah, Councilman Emerson.
Thank you. Robert, thanks for your presentation. I know that a few years ago, and I was on some of these projects as a contractor where we were just having, conflict after conflict after conflict. And it would basically be, these things were supposed to be moved and they never got moved ahead of the project. Since then, I know Jason Peaks put in practice on major streets where we're going to be changing something, not just doing, tearing out what was there and putting it back, something where relocations were necessary. He instituted a 3-year program where the first year was the design and utility conflicts. The second year was getting those conflicts resolved. And then the third year it would bid. Can you tell me what's been the result of that? Has that worked? And is that still what we're doing, even though Jason's not there any longer?
Right. I think on a lot of the major projects, again, 12th Street reconstruction, I think on 10th Street over between Fairlawn and Wanamaker, I think that time frame was also followed, where basically allowed a year in between design and construction of the project for the major utilities to be moved. I think that has worked out pretty well. On 12th Street, I know that I've seen a lot of notices coming in from Christie on these traffic disruption permits that, Kansas Gas was out there. I think Evergy was out there this past year, moving a lot of their facilities out of the way. So I would say on these major reconstruction projects, we do try to build in, that extra time for utilities to be moved. On a lot of smaller projects, we may not obviously need a whole year or a whole construction season for utilities to move out of the way. Again, it kind of depends on specific impacts to the project and the scope of the project.
Thank you. If I could just follow with one other thing, Chair.
Certainly.
Thank you. My only other question would be, again, what I've noticed on projects are when the utilities are doing stuff and moving, the city does a great job, I think, of quality control through the construction projects. But I don't see any checks being made when the utilities are doing the project. In other words, as far as compaction, as far as testing the concrete, the stuff they're putting back. Do we have a policy on that? And is that something that we might be implementing?
I might let Brian, if Brian has any other thoughts. I know that's come up very recently where there isn't a lot of oversight on private utility work. They're supposed to be informing us when they are doing work through the traffic disruption permits. I'm not sure how much of that actually does get notified or how much doesn't. But that is a concern, and as far as making sure that they're following all of the city specs when they're doing work within the right of way.
And if I could jump in too. We have to a point, I hate to say lost control of the right of way, but there's a lot of things happening in the right of way, whether it's associated with the project, a year ahead of time, or just a private utility out there installing fiber lines or whatever they're doing. So we did a little reorganization within engineering recently. We actually have a one person full-time working on the right-of-way tracking, right-of-way warranty, and verifying the work's done per our specs. And then when they're done, that it's left in as good or better condition than it was before. We have a lot of complaints that come in. Whatever the utility is may come out there, put a bore pit in, leave it pretty unsightly when they're done, and we don't even know they were there. We have a mission to get a much better handle on that, and that actually started earlier today.
Great, thank you for that. And one thing I guess I'd ask, we always have to get an excavation permit, even if we're just digging up, a water meter or something. Are they not required to get an excavation permit for every single place they're excavating in the city?
They are required. Sometimes they forget.
Well, and the thing that's nice about that is that's a way of funding that position, because it's a pretty nominal fee. It's like $12 or something. It's pretty darn reasonable fee. And frankly, even though I'm paying it sometimes, I'd be in favor of raising that fee if it gets enough money for you to hire, full-time people to go do that. Because I know years ago, when Tom Flanagan was our city engineer, a certain utility was going and putting a bunch of little 4x4 panels cutting in the street. And the reason they're doing that was without identifying the utility, if you're, what the hell? If you're putting 2 or 3 foot of gas line in, you can expense that immediately and put that in your rate base. But if you're doing, 100 feet, you have to capitalize that or something. So they were going and cutting these little squares. And then our taxpayers were on the hook for all these little tiny squares all over town. So the city went to the full panel policy now in concrete, which now hurts small people when, I've run into things where, older people will have a sewer service that needs done. And now they're $10,000 to replace a panel of street, which has been a kind of unfortunate consequence. But at the same time, I just, all the money we're trying to put in streets and all the work we're trying to do. And again, your people or the consulting engineers do a great job, in my opinion, of the quality control on the jobs. It's just, there's this whole other thing out here happening that frankly, like you said, they kind of go out all over and we never know what's happening. So I really appreciate you looking into that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Councilman Lesser, any questions?
Not really on this topic here, no.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. I did have one question, probably for Brian, just in general. What's the level of cooperation from the utilities?
Actually, it's pretty good. I think with what Robert mentioned, that monthly utility coordination meeting that we do, all of our utilities show up. They've actually seemed to take a real interest in working in the city, but we're also willing to work with them. As Robert mentioned, if there's a high dollar thing that we can design around, we'll definitely try to do that. And I think they appreciate that. And I've been very pleased with the success we've had with our utility companies.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on to the 2021 project update. Brian, back to you.
Yeah, that would be me. I think Christy's going to share the screen here real quick. Really small. We had this last time, didn't have a chance to get to it. This is an update that we did update since the January 25th meeting. It's broken down to a point as our pavement management system is. We have at the top our major rehabilitation project for 2021, which are basically mill and overlay with some base patching. We jump down to our reconstruction projects, which are what it sounds like, a complete reconstruction of the roadway. and down to our stopgap measures down below. We have a number of projects in the various stages of design or bidding or award. And so far for 2021, at the top, Southeast 37th was awarded last fall. A number of reasons it didn't get completed in the fall, but it will be done in March to April of this year. South Topeka Boulevard from 45th to 49th. We bid on February 2nd. And bids came in just where we thought they should, and tentative start date is April 5th. Another one that we opened bids on February 9th, Southeast Deer Creek Parkway, between 6th and 10th. This will tie into the project that we just completed underneath the overpasses by Reachers. And that was tentative start date of April 12th. Again, that was also a very good bid price. There's several other community areas you see, Highcrest and Central Highland Park. Requests for proposals from design firms interested in those projects are due on February 26th. As far as reconstruction, we did start Southwest 10th last year, and it will be completed this year. We worked from the west to the east. If you've been out there, the western part looks fantastic. 3 lanes, a curb and gutter, retaining walls, tremendous number of street lights. We get comments on the lighting, and that will be completed again this fall. North Kansas Avenue from Curtis to Norris. Robert mentioned boring underneath the railroad tracks. That work is complete. We do expect the project to be done sometime late spring to early summer. We'll also be starting North Kansas Avenue from Morris to Soldier Creek. We had awarded that project last late summer. This is the one where the contractor, it's a 12-week delivery time on some of the water valves that we used and didn't feel right starting it in the late fall. And so that project will start up again probably in the March timeframe. And then there's just a list of other projects that we have in work all the way down the list. The last item on there are programs. We have a number of programs, the 2021 infill sidewalk program that was approved by the governing body on Tuesday evening of last week for the North Topeka West. The ADA ramp program will be in the same area. We did just open bids on Central Park Sort. And one of the big projects we have right now is the 2021 biannual bridge inspection program. We received proposals from firms a couple of weeks ago. We're in the process of completing our evaluation of those. And Jahan is our program manager for this, and he's actually going to do a presentation in March on our bridge inspection program and our asset management component of that. So be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, questions from the committee? Councilman Emerson?
Yeah, I guess I will real quick. I saw, Brian, a couple of weeks ago that, or maybe it was just last week, there was an RFP for street sweeping. Did we get any, can you tell me if we got proposals on that?
Actually, I think that might be best if Tony's still on, Tony Trower, to answer that one.
I didn't hear the question. It was cutting out.
Hey, Tony, a question on the street sweeping proposals.
Hello?
Hey, Tony, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Tony?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Street sweeping proposal.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello. I can see you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, I can hear you.
Did you get any proposals on?
What was the question? One more time, please.
Did you get any?
Yes, we did. We got three of them. Yes, we received 3. I'm putting together some numbers of what it actually what it cost us to do that. I had to put together for the union, and but we got 3 sweeping bids.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Councilman Lesser, any questions? None? Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, can we just reel it back just a tiny bit for the street sweeping? So that is being third-partied out, is that correct, Tony? Trower, not Emerson.
We just got some bids to compare to see what, if we can do that, if it's cost effective to contract that out once or twice a year, or our folks continue doing it. But I have not got everything compiled together yet with all the bids, and then I'm just getting some information now on what it's costing us, what our fleet costs and stuff are that we're spending, so we can compare all of it.
Okay, and once that happens, I guess I would be asking Chair this. Neil, will that be something that will be presented to at PWI? This committee?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I imagine that maybe this is a question for the city manager. That decision, how quickly will that decision be made once the bids are analyzed?
Yeah, I haven't looked through the information yet. Tony, like you said, is still preparing it. I don't know that it would be a decision at the level for this committee, but it is something that we could present to the committee as to the information that we have found. There's no reason for us to not provide that. But as was said, we have some issues that we have to work through to compare pricing and so forth. Just to be sure everyone knows, we are not looking at eliminating positions or eliminating equipment by doing this. This is to supplement what we are already doing in order to ensure that we're hitting every part of the community a set amount of time, because with competing responsibilities for Tony's staff, it has been hard to be able to accomplish that, and we feel it's important. And especially as I look at this week, Tony has had his crew putting down sand and salt, and that is going to be something important that we look at, getting that sand up off of the pavement before the heavy rains come. So it is something we're interested in exploring. Believe it has merit, but I can't tell you whether it's something that we're going to move forward with until I have a chance to review that and hear their proposals.
Right. Well, and just to interject, I think that it would be good just to have that information available if y'all decide to put it forth at this meeting, just for transparency. And also, my question would be, the streets, when you talk about street sweeping, does that also include when y'all do the bridges? Is that all a part of street sweeping?
Yes.
Okay. I would just say I can see where you guys may be getting overwhelmed. And I know come spring, our bridges, I'm sure you guys work hard with the bridges, but the bridges get so I don't want to say litter filled, but they really do get messy in District 2 areas quite often. So if there is some way down the road where it would be cost effective and still have the overlook of the bridges and the cleaning of the bridges, which is important not only for the district as far as, beautification and all of that, but also as visitors come into Topeka or maybe attend, different festivals and have to cross this bridge or this bridge or this bridge, just to know that there is continued emphasis being put on that. So thank you, Chair. Thank you, City Manager Tony, too.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a complaint about street sweeping in my district a while back, and in discussion with Jackie Bogle at the time, found out that they were looking at this process, which I support. I think from past experience, I think street sweepers are absolutely one of the worst pieces of equipment to try to maintain, very expensive. We just don't have enough right now. So as long as it doesn't mean an elimination of folks, I think it's certainly something. I guess I would suggest to the city manager that maybe just a note to the council when a decision is made, if it doesn't coincide with this meeting, and then maybe a little bit more information in March on the whole process.
Sure, definitely.
All right. If there are no other questions, we will move to item 7, which is items from staff. Either Brian or city manager.
I'll jump in real quick. One of the things that staff is looking at is getting your input on topics that would be of interest to you moving forward. I mentioned in March, we're going to have a presentation on bridge inventory and asset management. I think I heard today, looking at the Oakland area as far as signage. The other thing in April, we plan to bring forth kind of our median update. That was a discussion on the February 6th work session on the CIP. And so our April meeting, we plan to have a discussion on medians. But if there were other topics that you find interesting or would be interested in, we'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, I think some of the things that come to mind that you mentioned, the traffic signs and speed limits, maybe just in general, a good discussion, and then focus on Oakland as well. I don't know when the next time we might be discussing vehicle leasing. I know that's been an ongoing discussion. Hannah, update on that?
Yes, actually, we do plan on bringing an update about the lease program and the fleet replacement program in totality next month at the March meeting. We anticipate being rather close to a point of making a decision, and we'll present it at that point to gain your guys' feedback as to what direction you feel would be appropriate.
Very good. That's probably enough items on the March agenda, I would guess. You mentioned bridge, traffic, leasing. You may have some project items at that point. One thing I would be interested in, I know a year ago, maybe a little bit more, there was an initial discussion about parking garage rates. And then at some point that, I think that issue was kind of backed down in favor of parking garage studies. I think, I don't know about the rest of the committee, but I would be interested in a little bit more understanding on the garages, how much it's going to cost us to continue to operate, those type of things that I think we've talked about a little bit in the past. Maybe a good item for the April or May timeframe as we have time. I guess I'd ask the rest of the committee, any other suggestions? Councilman Emerson.
Sorry, Chair, no more suggestions. I just a couple comments, but I can wait till the end if others have suggestions.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Councilman Lesser.
This is either as a question, or if it's not something that, if it's something that we do have to solve the issue, actually bring up in a formal setting. I don't know the answer to that, so I guess that's a question that will come to light here in a second. But this weekend, I was on Facebook, and there was an issue that a lady brought up that had to do with her sewer line that failed within the city right of way. And fairly common situation. As normal, I texted Bob Sample, and he responded within less than 5 minutes to get Sylvia's phone number. And then Sylvia contacted me within 5 minutes as well. So thank you, Bob, for that. And if Sylvia's on as well, as usual, quick response. Could not ask for anything more. And, and then in my phone call and visiting with Sylvia, as I anticipated, the letter that went out to this property owner basically said, hey, your sewer line failed within the city's right of way. You got 3 days to contact a plumber and 7 days to get it fixed. And if not, then we're sending somebody else. The city's sending somebody out there to take care of it. You will be responsible for the costs incurred, and please note the costs incurred by the property owner will be considerably higher than the repairs of a licensed plumber. So, of course, this lady's kind of in a panic. She's headed out of town. To make matters worse, she posts on there that apparently we did the inspection in September, and then now we're just notifying of the results and all that. I get it. The Sylvia and I had a great talk, and the intent of this is to create dialogue. If we say, hey, you got a month to get a plumber, then another month to get it done, people are going to wait for 2 months till they do anything, and we're behind. So I get that. You know what I mean? I get that. So it's a reach out. Hey, contact us. I think, obviously this is a form letter. I think we just need to look at this letter and maybe come up with a little softer approach on it. A little more of a, yes, this is what the statute says. You do have this. Please note, but maybe a sentence just saying, please note the statute says this. Our intent is for you to reach out to us and visit with us about a timely way to get this scheduled so we can have it on everybody's time frame. Because that's all Sylvia wants, or the department wants, and all those type of things. And quite frankly, it serves no purpose to put unattainable expectations in a letter that's just going to scare somebody. There's really no point in that. So I'd like to see if we can maybe come up with a softer letter and approach in these situations, while at the same time, I think it is reasonable to say you have 5 days to contact us with what your plan is, but she's not going to be able to get anybody to get out there and get it done in 7 days right now anyway, so anyway, I don't know if that's something that at this level we can just talk through and get that done, or if, because as the letter says, a copy of the city code is enclosed in the letter. If it said it is city code, if we have to do something different, that's not in my realm of expertise, but we didn't need the PR on 150 shares and looks and all those type of things. So I think I'm open to suggestions, or I guess my question is what we can do to kind of maybe solve this.
Thank you, Councilman Lesser. I've run into similar issues, heard from people that have received that letter, and unfortunately, a lot of folks that have failing sewers are maybe older or on fixed incomes and things like that, and it is kind of a big issue. Maybe city manager could expand on that a little bit. I would think having Sylvia and some folks come and talk to us a little bit about what the issues are and what does the city need to get out of it. And as
Right.
Councilman Lesser said, how can we be a little bit kinder and friendlier about the notification? City manager?
I think that we can. I mean, I think you see from staff, whenever they're contacted, we end up working out a solution that provides an appropriate time frame. But I think, taking a look at how we're sending our letters, what we're stating in those can be modified. I need to look at specifically if there's anything in the code that will mandate a certain time frame, and if so, then we'll need to come back to you with a recommendation related to that. I've not looked. It's been a little while since I looked at this issue. about almost 2 years ago. This had come up in the past. So we'll take a look at it again and then give you an answer at the next meeting as to what we would propose.
But I think the other thing it does is, Jason Ward, who is the infrastructure manager, Jason's a good dude, and it puts him in a position where he can't win. I mean, we shouldn't be putting him in a position where he's going to have to take that phone call and get his ass chewed, about how unrealistic it is. And I mean, that's not good. I mean, I wouldn't want to take those phone calls for, unrealistic expectations. So I say this as much for the public, as much for, putting our employees in a situation that they shouldn't have to, take that, because people get upset.
Yeah. And we've done some changes like that, for example, in property maintenance division. We're not sending a demand letter on painting their house in December, January, and February. We're sending them a note saying we've identified your house needs to be painted. We'll be back in touch in the spring. And so we're taking a little softer approach, helping to make sure that people understand there's an issue that we need to have addressed, but getting an appropriate timeline developed.
Yeah, and like I do want to emphasize too, Bob and Sylvia, as always, were fantastic in getting back to me. And Sylvia said exactly that. Hey, no, this is not. We're not going to. We're going to get a hold of. We'll get a hold of them, and it's to get the ball rolling. But there again, at the same time, I don't want to keep harping on it, but at the same time, if we can come up with a kinder, softer way, let's just do it for everybody's sake.
Thank you. Councilwoman Valdivia Alpla.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, I'm glad that you brought that up. It would be interesting to know, was there anything marked on that letter at the bottom that stated collection manager? I'm asking you that. I don't need an answer right now. Maybe we can just chat about it later. I do know city manager is correct. This has been an issue even before I got elected to office. Constituents were coming and calling from Oakland about very similar letters, Mike. They were very concerned because most of the folks that were getting that were folks on fixed incomes. So as we look at that strategic vision that we have, right, about do better, be better, not only as who we are as city council people, but what we want the staff to aspire to, right? That front line customer service. It doesn't mean that, the city can't meet the objectives that they need to meet. What it does mean is that first impressions are everything, and that anyone that has had a long period of time in customer service, or it's just the way you want to be treated, right? None of us would want to receive that type of letter. So I think that, you speaking about this now, Mike, is putting us that we know we've been dealing with this for some time. City manager stresses the importance of revisiting it. So as we revisit it, then let's actually, work really hard at creating something that can get the point across without being so nerve-wracking to a lot of people, and encourage customer service, good customer service as well. But thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So if I'm keeping score here, it looks like for next month we have update on leasing. We have a discussion of traffic signs and enforcement of speed limits. We have a discussion on the bridge program, and we're going to have an update on private sewer service and city right-of-way. That sounds like a pretty good agenda. So we'll look maybe at parking garages in April or May, wherever that fits in. And I believe Councilman Emerson had some thoughts. Councilman Emerson. It's like he might have, maybe he got hit by the rolling blackout.
Possible.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Oh, there he is.
All right. Councilman Emerson, you had You had a question or two?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you kicked me off for some reason. I just logged back in. I appreciate what Mike and Christina said there. And frankly, that just really upsets me that that we're sending that out. I mean, God, that's, I'm not going to say anything further, but we got to do better than that. Anyway, so but a couple things I want to thank. First of all, Tony Trower and his crews, awesome job throughout the last few days. I mean, my gosh, these temperatures, and I know you guys ended up changing what you're doing due to the temps. I think you added sand to things, so I really appreciate all the work you guys are doing. This is tough weather on guys, equipment, everything. So keep up the great work, man. And also just wanted to thank Public Works staff and engineering. I've kind of been harping over the last few years about get things bid early so that people can get under contract and start early in the construction season. And you guys hit the ball out of the park this past year, even though I didn't like bidding something on the 23rd or the 24th of December. It was a good thing. It was a good thing for the city, and we didn't get it anyway. But I really appreciate you guys doing that. That both helps with pricing, and it also helps guys get started early. So great work, everybody, on that.
All right, thank you, Councilman Emerson. I believe we are at the end of the agenda. We've hit items from the committee. Any other items that we've missed? Mr. Faust, City Manager?
I think the only thing I would say is Tony mentioned, our water maintenance crews have been working terribly hard in this cold weather. The more water main breaks than we know what to do with, obviously. So it's been a challenge for them, and they're still out there working in this -degree weather, trying to stop the water from flowing. So just wanted to comment on that as well.
Absolutely. For all the folks that are out there, city, county, state workers that are keeping us safe, we appreciate it. For those of us that are lucky enough to be able to stay inside during this really horrible weather. Interestingly enough, I'm talking to a gentleman in Dallas, Texas this morning, 9 degrees, 6 inches of snow, and they're completely shut down. They don't have a snow plow in sight, so it's hitting a lot of people. All right.
My mother's in Fort Worth, and they have no power. Haven't had power since they got the fireplace going and been in bed. So it's I didn't need to know that from my mother, but anyway.
It's crazy weather. So everybody stay safe. Looks like we've got our next meeting set for March 15th, which I believe is a Monday at 2 o'clock. If there's nothing else before the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.